Wherever you find yourself listening, perhaps nestled beneath the comfort of blankets, or reclining, eyes slowly growing heavier, allow yourself to drift gently back in time, far beyond the familiar chapters of history. A time when humanity first gathered in dense, bustling places, where alleys twisted like the roots of ancient trees, where every step was pressed into damp clay, and where survival was an art of endurance. To a distant dawn in the world's first city, beyond Rome, beyond the pyramids of Egypt, a place called Uruk, a name that hums through the corridors of time, faint but insistent, into the hazy cradle of civilization itself, exploring the rulers who dreamed of immortality, the scribes who first etched symbols into clay, and the towering temples that brushed against the heavens. Tonight, we'll meander through the earliest chapter of city life. Above, wooden beams sometimes crisscross the alleyways, supporting upper levels or hanging bundles of dried reeds, fish, or cloth. A misstep could mean slipping, or worse, stepping into the leavings of a neighbor's chamber pot, casually dumped into the street. Metalworkers hammer copper, sending sharp, tinny echoes between the walls. Sellers cry out, hawking dates, barley, or beads of lapis lazuli brought from distant lands. The air is alive with the buzzing of flies, and here and there, stray dogs nose through heaps of discarded food, their eyes watchful and wary, perhaps pressed into service hauling reeds from the riverbank, or carrying bricks for the endless construction that defines Uruk. Our journey begins in the world's first known city. There are no clocks, but the angle of the light, the position of shadows, dictate the pace of the day. Men and women shuffle between home and workshop. Though the Euphrates River runs nearby, the drinking water is drawn carefully, often mixed with beer. Weak, sour, but safer than water alone. There is no medicine as you might understand it, only herbs, prayers, and the hope that the gods look kindly upon you today. Children chase one another, barefoot and nimble. There is no privacy, no respite from the heat, only the dull ache in your muscles and the hope that night might bring a breeze. The heat lingers. Fires are lit for cooking, their smoke curling into the dusk. Prayers drift upwards too, whispered invocations to Inanna, the patron goddess of Uruk. Her great temple looms in the distance, a massive ziggurat of mud brick tiers, shadowing the horizon like a man-made mountain. The elderly sit by doorways, watching, sometimes offering quiet commentary on the passing scene. Together, we'll wander its streets ... and beyond ... But for now ... slow your breath. Let the rhythm of your pulse ease. And imagine yourself waking ... Segment 1. Why you wouldn't last a day in Uruk. The first city imagined ... trade, status, connection to the divine through its temples. And the intoxicating sense that here, within these baked walls, humanity was doing something new, something grander than before. You awaken not to the soft chirping of birds ... From these crowded quarters, to the towering ambitions of the city's greatest ruler. Meat is a luxury you might rarely taste, reserved for feast days or sacrifices. Instead, most meals are gruel, a thick, filling mush that sticks to your ribs but offers little pleasure. Sweat beads on your brow almost immediately, trickling down your back, soaking the rough linen that barely protects your skin, nor the gentle light filtering through linen curtains. But to the low hum of voices, the distant braying of goats, and the faint, pervasive scent of earth ... mixed with something less pleasant. You are in Uruk around 3000 BCE. Outside your dwelling, made of sun-baked mud bricks, the air is already thick and heavy. It smells of damp clay, of cooking fires, and of the waste that collects where people, animals, and refuse converge. There are no proper sewers here, only narrow, winding channels where water and waste mingle, pooling in shallow depressions that steam gently in the heat. As you step outside, The alleys narrow, so tight, in fact, that you could stretch your arms and nearly touch the walls on either side. The ground underfoot is uneven, a patchwork of hardened mud, loose stones, and the occasional slick of something best left unnamed. The walls of homes rise close and high, blotting out much of the sky, and what little light filters down is pale and indirect. You navigate carefully. Noise is a constant companion in Uruk. Somewhere, a potter's wheel spins, the rhythmic thump of clay being shaped punctuating the day. And yet, beyond the chaos is a kind of rhythm. The people of Uruk rise early, their lives governed by the relentless sun. You might attempt to work. If you're fortunate, you might be a potter or a weaver, but most likely, you are a laborer. And the sun, the sun is merciless. It rises high, pressing down with a heat that makes the mud bricks exhale their stored warmth, turning the air into a heavy blanket. Water is precious, and food, a diet of barley bread, onions, dates, and lentils. Disease, is everywhere. Infections from small cuts. The ceaseless spread of illnesses born from crowded living. As the day wanes, the city doesn't fall silent. But you, exhausted, retreat to your cramped home, perhaps a single-room dwelling shared with family. Sleep comes fitful, shallow, disturbed by the buzz of insects, the bark of dogs, and the occasional shriek from some distant alley. And tomorrow, the same rhythm begins again. You may wonder, why did people stay? Why did they endure such a crowded, noisy, and uncomfortable existence? Because Uruk, for all its hardships, offered something that no lonely village could: opportunity. Yet for you, for an outsider accustomed to cleaner, quieter, more private lives, you simply wouldn't last a day. Now, having wandered the cramped and steamy alleys of Uruk, let us ascend. A man who sought not just to rule but to live forever. Let us meet him now Gilgamesh. Segment 2. The King Who Claimed Immortality. Gilgamesh. Imagine now that the hum of Uruk's crowded alleys has faded. The narrow, shadowy streets give way to open courtyards, to broad avenues lined with carved stone. And before you rises a palace, larger, grander, more imposing than anything you've yet seen. A name bound with legends of gods, monsters, and the relentless search for immortality. This is the domain of Gilgamesh, the semi-mythical king of Uruk, a figure whose name echoes not only through his own time, but across millennia. A time when Uruk was a pulsating heart of innovation, commerce, and power. Though, of course, this was not a biological statement, but a measure of reverence, fear, and admiration. In the eyes of his people, he stood apart, a being touched by the gods. The city was already vast, perhaps home to 40,000 or more souls, a remarkable size for the time. And instead, imagine the man himself. The stories, even those told by his own people, describe him as harsh, even tyrannical in his early rule. He claimed what he wanted. His appetite for power, for pleasure, for proving his strength was boundless. But let us, for a while, set aside the epic poetry. Enkidu was a creature of the steppe, covered in hair, living among the animals. They fought, it is said, a clash that shook the city, but neither emerged victorious. Instead, they became companions, brothers in arms. Yet, through an encounter with civilization, through bread, beer, and human companionship, Enkidu was transformed. Gilgamesh, if he lived as the historical records suggest, would have ruled sometime around 2800 BCE. Through dense forests, heavy with the scent of resin and shaded by towering, ancient trees, they journeyed, bringing with them weapons forged for gods. He is imposing not just in stature, though the legends grant him enormous size, but in presence. That humans, even those tinged with divinity, could challenge the world's old order, but a man struck by grief. A man, for the first time, who truly grasped his own mortality. Days passed, each slower than the last, as Gilgamesh watched his dearest friend wither. The strong man, the wild man, reduced to frailty, until finally he died. His robes are of fine linen, dyed deep reds and blues, the mark of elite status. Around his neck, beads of lapis lazuli catch the light, imported at great cost from the distant mountains of Afghanistan. He had already built something that might outlast him. In a ruler of the ancient world, the air heavy, silent, but for the occasional creak of wood or distant footfall. A simple, quiet theft, yet one that robbed him of his quest's reward. He was described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. To find Utnapishtim, the one man granted immortality by the gods, and symbols. Gilgamesh crossed vast deserts, scaled mountains where the sun itself was said to rise, and ventured to the depths of the sea. There are disputes to settle, tributes to assess, alliances to forge. Though Gilgamesh is remembered as a warrior, his days would also be spent managing the intricate workings of a growing urban state. But what does that look like? Imagine him seated upon a throne of polished wood, inlaid with precious metals, in a vast chamber cooled by damp reed mats and shaded from the blistering sun. In his court, the air is filled with the murmur of scribes, counselors, and emissaries from other city-states. Yet, he was no gentle king. But then, as the legends say, came Enkidu, a wild man, shaped by the gods themselves, sent to humble Gilgamesh. Their meeting was destined, and from this bond, a journey began. Gilgamesh and Enkidu set out to confront the cedar forest, to slay the monstrous guardian Humbaba, a task both heroic and audacious. The slaying of Humbaba was more than just a feat of strength. It was a declaration. But with defiance came consequence. The gods were angered, and soon Enkidu fell ill, stricken by a sickness sent from the heavens. Imagine for a moment the stillness of that chamber. Gilgamesh was transformed, no longer the brash, boastful king. And so he set out, on a journey that legends say took him beyond the edges of the world. But immortality was not his to claim. Even when offered a plant said to restore youth, he faltered. The plant was stolen by a serpent while he bathed. He returned to Uruk, not immortal, but wiser. He stood upon the city walls, broad and mighty, and realized that in these bricks, in these streets, a city, an idea, a story. And that story, written down centuries later on fragile clay tablets, would survive not just his bones, but entire civilizations. So, as the sun sets on the reign of Gilgamesh, and the winds stir the dust along Uruk's walls, we too will turn to the traces left behind, the marks in clay, the first attempts to capture thought, trade, and memory, the first written words of humanity. Let us now journey into the world of scribes, to decode the mysteries of cuneiform. Segment 3. Decoding cuneiform, the first written language. Let us now imagine. You are seated in a small, shaded room, the kind that smells faintly of damp reeds and drying clay. Light filters through a narrow window, casting long, dappled shadows across the walls. Before you sits a low wooden table. Upon it, a simple yet remarkable tool. A stylus, cut from reed, its tip flattened just so. Beside it, a slab of wet clay, smooth and waiting. A place of marks and impressions, of careful strokes pressed into yielding clay. This is where the world of writing begins. In Uruk and the lands of ancient Sumer, this was the scribe's realm, but formed by pressing the stylus into the soft surface. One could not simply scribble. Each sign required careful pressure, the angle of the stylus tip just right, the clay moist but firm. Once inscribed, the tablets were left to dry in the sun or baked to permanence in a kiln. making them nearly immortal, so long as they escaped flood, fire, or careless hands, leaving little triangular imprints. The script is called cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped, for that is precisely what it was. A language not drawn with sweeping curves. The act of writing was both delicate and deliberate. They developed hundreds of signs, each representing syllables or whole concepts. Yet of those, many remain unread. The script evolved, became more complex, and as dynasties rose and fell, the knowledge of how to read these signs was lost. Much like the Rosetta Stone for Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Behistun carving allowed linguists to compare scripts and crack the ancient code. Over time, the clay preserved not just trades and taxes, but stories. Barley owed, goats traded, laborers' rations tallied. Each mark on a tablet stood for a debt, a transaction, a record of obligation, a merchant's anxiety over an unpaid debt, a farmer's record of barley harvests, a priest's careful listing of offerings to the gods. But what was written? The great epics, including the Tales of Gilgamesh. In the beginning, not poetry nor philosophy, but numbers. Cuneiform was born from the rhythms of trade, of accounting, of the bureaucracy that blossomed as cities like Uruk expanded. Your world is one of lists ... columns of symbols denoting livestock, grain, oil, beer. Locked in a script that only a few can read, they sit silent, yet heavy with the potential to reveal new glimpses of daily life, of beliefs, of fears long since forgotten. Imagine being a scribe, hunched over day after day, the smell of clay ever in your nostrils, the cool dampness of it against your fingers. In many ways, they were the keepers of memory, ensuring that what was agreed, what was promised, and what was dreamed ... was not lost to time. But slowly, inevitably, these marks grew beyond numbers. The scribes of Uruk and their successors began to invent ways of capturing spoken words, abstract ideas, names of kings, descriptions of lands and gods. Some of these tablets remain with us still. Hundreds of thousands, in fact, dug from the earth by archaeologists, their surfaces scored with those same wedge-like patterns. For centuries, cuneiform was a puzzle, its meanings obscured, its symbols silent. It wasn't until the 19th century when scholars deciphered the Behistun inscription, a monumental trilingual carving in Iran, that the code began to unravel. Through painstaking work, they revived the voices of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria. Now, when you gaze upon a cuneiform tablet, you glimpse the thoughts of a world 4, even 5,000 years past. And of course, ... consider this. Even now, in museum vaults and archaeological sites, there are thousands of tablets still untranslated. The scribe's world was one of precision and patience, a rhythm of pressing, marking, and shaping that mirrors the rhythms of the city itself. And yet, for all their labors, most scribes remain nameless, their hands remembered only through the careful grooves they left in the earth. As the clay hardened, so too did their voices, fossilized, awaiting rediscovery. Now, with the tablets stored and the stylus set aside, let us look beyond the scribe's workshop. Let us ascend again, not to the noisy streets of Uruk, but to the towering heights of its temples, to the domain of priests, ... of rituals ... and of the great ziggurat reaching like a man-made mountain toward the gods. We will spend our final moments together in that rarefied air, among the elite who serve not kings, but divinity itself. Segment 4. The Priests and Ziggurats. A day in the temple elite's life. Imagine, once again, that you are in Uruk, but this time you stand not among the crowded alleys, nor within the scribe's modest chambers, but at the foot of a grand structure that dominates the skyline, a towering, stepped pyramid of baked mud brick that seems to rise toward the very heavens. It is the very heart of the city's spiritual life, and the faint scent of burning incense, sweet, resinous, mingling with the ever-present dust. A connection between earth and sky, between mortal concerns and divine favor. This is the ziggurat, dedicated to Inanna, the queen of heaven and the patron goddess of Uruk. The ziggurat is not just a monument. The air here is different, cooler, quieter, ... punctuated by the low murmur of prayers. Each item is selected with care, arranged in precise configurations on stone altars. You are among the priests and priestesses, the temple elite. A steady, almost hypnotic procession of duties, each steeped in tradition and meaning. From this height, Uruk unfurls like a tapestry, the dense weave of homes, the glimmering ribbon of the Euphrates in the distance, the haze of cooking fires drifting upwards. They move with measured grace, clad in finely woven garments of wool and linen, some dyed in rare hues of deep indigo or crimson, colors reserved for those of sacred standing. To them, the heavens spoke in cycles and signs, offering glimpses into the will of the gods. The goddess must be awakened, her statue cleansed and dressed anew. The sky is not just a void, but a living script, one that only the learned might read. It is a powerful economic center, controlling vast tracts of farmland, flocks of sheep and goats, and legions of laborers. Watching over the restless city below, scribes employed by the temple meticulously record every transaction, every offering, every expenditure. The air cools. The first stars appear, bright, sharp points of light in a vast indigo sky. But their burden is no less heavy, for they bear the weight of ensuring the gods' favor, felt the press of bodies and the weight of the sun overhead. We have sat with kings who sought to outpace death itself, watched scribes etch memory into clay, and stood atop the great ziggurat, gazing at the stars that watched over them all, of keeping the unseen forces of chaos at bay through endless ceremony and precision. A place where ambition first took the shape of walls, where stories were born in baked clay, where even the sky was mapped in the hopes of understanding one's place in the world. From the ziggurat's summit, the city feels ... distant, removed from the sweat and noise below. Yet the questions that stirred Gilgamesh, the desire for meaning, for permanence, for connection to something greater, remain with us still. Priests enter the innermost sanctum, their feet bare, their voices hushed. Let the past drift further away, until all that remains is the gentle rhythm of your breath, steady and soft. Here, in this secluded chamber, the image of Inanna, fashioned of gold or wood, adorned with jewels, is ritually bathed, anointed with perfumed oils, and clothed in fresh garments. Around their necks hang amulets, charms of stone and shell, thought to guard against impurity. Torches flicker along the terraces, their flames swaying gently in the evening breeze. Somewhere, a low chant persists, a final prayer carried into the dark. Their day begins before the sun's first light in quiet ritual. To serve the gods is to maintain the cosmic balance, an intricate dance of offerings, prayers, and purification. Throughout the day, offerings are prepared and presented. Baskets of dates, loaves of barley bread, jars of beer and wine. But the temple is more than a house of worship. Imagine the rhythm of the temple courtyard, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the low chant of incantations carried on the breeze, the clink of bronze vessels being filled and emptied. High atop the ziggurat, a priest might gaze out across the city. The ziggurat itself is not merely a stairway to heaven. It is a clock of sorts, its shadow marking the time of day, its terraces serving as stages for celestial observation. The priests were also astrologers, watching the stars, tracing the patterns of the moon, and noting the shifting positions of the planets. In these quiet moments, as the sun tilts westward, imagine a priest slowly inscribing the positions of stars onto a clay tablet, his eyes steady, his hand patient. Evening descends and the final offerings are made. Yet even here, even amid wealth and status, Life is a matter of ritual and responsibility. The priests do not labor in the fields, nor fight in wars. As night fully envelops Uruk, the temple falls into a hushed stillness, and high above, the ziggurat stands silent, a guardian of the night. Conclusion, and now, our journey through Uruk, the world's first city, draws gently to a close. We have wandered its cramped, cluttered streets. Life in Uruk was relentless, loud, dirty, crowded, and yet profoundly human. And as you rest now, beneath your soft sheets, surrounded by the quiet hum of the modern night, consider how far we have come, from mud brick to concrete, from cuneiform to glowing screens. So breathe deeply. Good night, traveler of time. Sleep well.